I'm Liv.
And I am Grace.
And together we are
Liv and Grace Read Books. Today we are doing a book talk / discussion / review, and that book is The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness.
This book was really interesting and we're excited to talk about it with you guys.
As a brief sort of introduction to the book, we'll tell you a little bit about it and then go on to our review and thoughts, feels, opinions about the book. So this book is very unique. I have never read something like it. It is actually set in the world where there is a chosen one, like the person who always save the world, save the town, save the people. But the book is actually told by a boy named Mikey, who is just a normal person who is trying to live his life, graduate high school. He wants to complete all of these things before leaving high school and going off to college and leaving his family. And it basically revolves around the idea of these people trying to get by, and there is the story of the chosen ones trying to save the world and all of that stuff that you see in like a normal fantasy book. But this was really different, really funny and very sarcastic, and I loved that about it.
So it was kind of like you're hearing about the story that you'd normally read. So like generally I'd pick up a book and it'd be like a normal teenager finds out he's a fairy, goes to save the world, like that's what you're reading. But in this one you're reading about that normal teenager a little bit, but you're also reading about the people who aren't affected at all. And I think it was really interesting to see how people who aren't mentioned generally in a book, how they're feeling, what they're going through, how they have no idea what's going on. They kind of have a vibe that something's up, but like they don't actually understand what's going on. And like I think it's so weird to not have that full understanding. Like
it was a really interesting concept, and the premise of the book was good. I thought it was a good read. So the fantasy element of the book is told in the chapter headings through the kids who are the chosen ones. And it was very funny and interesting. At the beginning, I didn't really understand what was going on because you don't really have an explanation about these headings. But as the book went on, you can tell that the story builds up, and it's really cool to see the two worlds in one book but so different develop, and I really love that aspect. It's really interesting and funny. And the indie kids' names are so hilarious. It was my favourite part of the book. Yeah. Like, who names a son or even a daughter Satchel?
To be honest, I thought it was a bag. I thought that took
in the book, when one of the indie kids mentions like the normal kids, they're like, "Oh, where's Satchel?" And they're like looking around. I don't see a bag anywhere. They're like, "No, not a satchel, Satchel."
Yeah, that was a really interesting concept, and I enjoyed reading that.
Overall, we both gave it 3.5 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. It wasn't particularly the kind of book that you go looking for to read if you're searching for a kind of big build-up. The way I explained in my review was it was very neutral. So when I picked it up, I was like, oh yeah, this is alright. And by the end, I was like, oh yeah, this is alright. And during the middle, I wasn't stressing like especially if I'm reading a really crazy, hectic book, I get really scared and I am just like, oh my god. But it wasn't like that for me. It was really flat, but not in a bad way. I liked it. It was calming, it was a very quick read, and it was a good break up from all the fantasy I have been reading lately, and I really did enjoy it.
The way Grace described it, which I think is really relevant and accurate, was it's persevering wallflower with a little bit of a fantasy twist.
Yes, that is exactly what it reminded me of as soon as I got about halfway. It covers so many relevant issues like sexuality, leaving school and advancing into adult life, mental illnesses. It just covers all of these good aspects that you really want in a book, but also with the fantasy twist and just the common relatable aspects.
One thing I really enjoyed about it was the not romanticizing of mental illness. Like there was a real life thing of mental illness and it wasn't romanticized. It wasn't made to be like Hannah loved him because he had all these problems. Like it wasn't like that at all. It was very much he had OCD so bad that he was washing his hands like 100 times and they were cracked and bleeding. Like that's not romanticized, that's not nice. Like it was just a real life kind of
It's not a pleasant thing to think about. It makes you really like, it makes you understand that there are people and conditions where they're like this and they're not pleasant to be in, but you just have to keep going. And in the end, Mikey does figure out his way through his illness. It was a nice change to see that from other books where all this stuff is romanticized and it is wrong when people do that. But it was really real. It was a real life situation, and you can imagine yourself in the situation, even through the fantasy things, and it was good. It was different from the Patrick Ness novels I have read personally, and although it was a bit flat, like I said, I did find myself enjoying it, and when it was over, I did cry. I did wish that there was more to go on, but at the same time, I was happy that I had read it. I was happy that it was over, that it finished. I liked where it finished, and what more can I say? It was a nice book to read overall.
Throughout the whole book, I was kind of wondering what was going on a little bit. I've read a fair few of his books. I've read the Chaos Walking series. Trilogy, actually, it's a trilogy. I've also read the More Than This, which I really enjoyed. It was weird, but in a good way, and it had an adventurous story, and it was based on the chosen one's kind of perspective, and it was really different to see this new perspective. For a Patrick Ness novel, I was really surprised when I read it. I was expecting something different, and I didn't get what I was expecting, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. I still enjoyed it, but
I think a lot of people did go into this book expecting a lot, because Patrick Ness is a fantastic author. His books are fantastic. They always have good morals and messages and themes, and I think people were expecting a really big kick out of this book, but like I said, it was very neutral, and I think everyone was disappointed by that neutral effect. But I didn't go into this book expecting anything. I was just really intrigued by the synopsis and the premise and the idea of what it was about. So as I went in, I was totally blank-minded. I didn't even read the little blurb on the inside. I just went into it, and I did find myself a bit, this is kind of weird, but good at the same time. But I think that's why a lot of people have given it low ratings or were disappointed, because they were expecting too much.
I think that it was overall a really good book. I loved the concept. I loved the idea that mental illness isn't something romantic. I loved the indie kids and the story that we got at the start of each chapter. We'll squizzle at that. The thing that let it down for me and lost that 1.5 stars was that it didn't do much for me. It was good, but it just wasn't speaking to me on an emotional level.
It's a good contemporary book, even though it has fantasy elements, so it's good if you're just looking for kind of a break in all the hecticness of fantasy or whatever genre you were into.
It's a good filler read.
It is a good filler read. I would recommend this book. If you have read Patrick Ness's other novels, just know that it's not the same. It's not the same concept of his other books. So that is all for this discussion video. We hope you liked it.
Thanks so much for watching. Our Goodreads and Instagrams and Tumblrs are in the description box below.
We hope you have a great week.
We'll see you next week with a new video. Goodbye!